Linda's got the time.
12:03.
003. Roll call, Gus. Who else is here? Jeff's not here. Will. I'm jumping all over. Jay. Here. Sandy's not here. Ryan. Here. I'm here. Smith.
Here.
Tankino here. Thank you. Approve agenda. It's a real short agenda. Again, it's a special meeting we called.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented by the secretary.
Second. So Gus and Jay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Good. All right. Public participation. Don't see anybody in the room.
Anyone that wishes to remote participate, please raise your hand.
Well, again, for this meeting, if there was somebody that wanted to speak during comments, we're gonna let you do it during Zoom. Looking into the Open Meeting Act, again, Zoom was allowed during COVID to let people speak. Washington County, City of Ann Arbor doesn't let people speak during Zoom, so next year, 24, we're just gonna let people speak here in public, come to the meeting, love to meet you and speak. If there's any people that can't make it, Washington County, we'll put a link on there. Like Washington County does, you can send an email. There's already a link to us, but send an email, we'll post it, we'll put in the records. Okay, so you can speak that way through email or in public. And again, Open Meeting Act, we all have to be here. So it'd be nice if the public came here too. And again, meet your neighbors, come here, meet us, ask us questions before, after the meeting. So public comment next year will be just live, like most other boards do.
In person.
In person. Thank you. Anybody want any comments on Zoom right now? 3 minutes to speak. I don't think so. No?
I don't see any hands.
All right.
Being none, we're moving on to.
All right, moving on to our guests. So after our last meeting, Linda and Jennifer knew Amy. That is what would you call yourself? A talent recruiter? A talent recruiter in Ann Arbor, very successful. Looking over bios, works with a lot of my other clients that are in the private sector. So we'll just start up the meeting and let Amy explain herself, maybe how she can help us. Again, I think our goal is to discuss hiring a consultant to help the DDA in the different areas that we need help in, which we need help in a lot of areas, but we'll see. So with that, maybe you want to just introduce yourself to people that don't know and then do a Q&A with you.
Sounds great. So good afternoon. I'm Amy Scio. I have a consulting firm where we focus on recruiting and HR services. I'm born and raised in Ann Arbor. If I was really good at golf, I could hit a golf ball and hit my brother's house from here, who lives just across the street. So very connected to the community. I have a business background. I spent about 10 years in corporate human resources at Ford Motor Company and some organizations in California. Then when I moved back to Michigan, worked briefly at the business school, and then joined Ann Arbor Spartan, where I was their talent person. I kind of got to be the HR manager for Washington County. So I helped a lot of local businesses attract, retain, and develop talent. Then a few of us from local economic development went up to state economic development to be part of the Snyder administration. So for about 4 years, I was the senior vice president of talent enhancement for the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, where I launched statewide programs to attract, retain, and develop talent for the state of Michigan. Then about 8.5 years ago, I launched my firm to focus on providing an affordable recruiting model for startups because they couldn't afford a traditional model. Since then, we've expanded to provide services to other businesses, nonprofits and local governments and others in the public sector, and have expanded our offerings to also include a full range of HR services, including fractional outsourced HR support. And I'm excited to be here and to answer any questions and to help in any way that I can.
Questions?
I should also add that Amy has done, and her firm have done a lot of searches, helped with a lot of searches for Scio Township during the past, mostly past 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, good disclosure.
Hmm.
Yeah, we met, I think you were interviewing the managers before, we met during that process too.
You know how to find it, yeah.
Again, questions for Amy?
So my question specifically, is, I think we want to narrow down what we want this consultant to do. Have sort of a defined role or job description for this person. Unless somebody already has that I'm thinking of doing. That would probably be the first step before we actually want to hire somebody is figure out what they want to do.
Yeah, and that's where it's totally agree. Having a formal job description that really outlines everything you want this person to do, as well as fully defines education experiences, key skills, abilities, knowledge, in a pretty formal job description template is really important. You will also want to identify essential duties so that if there's issues with somebody with a disability, to make sure that they can still do those essential duties, that comes into play. So very, very important for that to be step number one. And then, yes, so totally agree.
Good.
Well, I was just gonna say, cause I was, this came up at the end of the last meeting, I had to leave early. And it's figuring out what this person's going to do, what type of role we actually need.
Is it possible that it's more than one? Cause it seemed to me that there were kind of different ideas that were tossed out. One was sort of somebody who would be an ongoing kind of administrator or perform kind of necessary administrative functions for the DDA on an ongoing basis. And then there was also this question, I think you posed, maybe you posed, Bob, and that was somebody who would come in for a project of preparing a proposal for extension of the DDA past 2029. And I'm not sure that that's the same person or the same position.
I think that'd be the same. And we were talking, the bus shelter is a prime example. It was a great project. It did take a lot of man hours by a lot of us on the board. We hired a consultant, we hired Washington Engineering, and Joe did an excellent job kind of coordinating. We found a place to store the bus shelters, but it was all a lot of man hours for us. So, I mean, I personally could see something like that, like somebody to help with projects like that. You know, I don't know if we need administration. A long time ago, we had the Belleville DDA come here and talk to us, and it was interesting what they do over there. And they recommended that we put up flags along the boulevard to promote, you know, holiday shopping or something. That was about the only idea. So I just, you know, it's like everything, like, you know, the consultant would be great if it works out, right? Advertising is great if it works out. I mean, it's kind of a, you know, but you have to try, I guess. So the question is to you guys, and I didn't want to put out a general outline. I wanted you guys to kind of come up with the ideas, but you know, are we looking for just project personnel? Are we looking for an admin person? Are we looking for, you know, some consultant just to hire? Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jay Holland. Historically, DDA has been involved in capital improvement projects. And I'm wondering if you have anybody in your roster, so to speak, that may be familiar with DDAs, how they operate, what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do. And you know, what typically is handled by DDAs. I know Ann Arbor's gone way beyond the scope of most DDAs as far as what they handle, but they have lots of funding to do that. So I guess that's for me, you know, is it, you know, we're kind of like working on roads now and stuff. We've always worked on roads, but before that, back when DDA started, They worked on water mains and sewer mains, you know, then the boulevard and so on. And, you know, we need somebody that can help us with our kind of vision too, as well as our scope of what we're.
And these all things kind of fit together. Obviously, understanding what you all want to do as an organization level is important. And then narrowing it down. A process that I've used with some of my reorganization work is to look at like 4 levels. Number one, it's like called principles, processes, roles and responsibilities, and then the 4th is structure. So number one, what are the principles that you want to, or the goals or the vision of the organization? Number 2 is around the processes. What are the processes that this organization will need to do to meet the vision, goals, objectives of the organization? So it could be capital improvement processes, it could be marketing, it could be communications, whatever those processes are. Then you take the processes and you break them up into kind of activities and tasks that can become departments for really large organizations, or a job description for things that need to be done. To the point earlier, sometimes you might need 2 people, you know, if you go to go through this process. So maybe, you know, stepping back and do a little bit of, you know, kind of visioning, walking through this around what that would be, you know, before you even do the job description sounds like it could be a beneficial exercise.
I have another, thank you. I have another question, but for Will. Last meeting, there was a discussion, suggestion that the township was hiring someone to do projects. Is that taking place?
Yes,
And would that person be available to us to help us with projects?
potentially. That person is Chris Cheng, and he was on the planning commission, so we had some interaction with him.
Well, he worked at the city of Ann Arbor.
Well, yeah,
So
he still does technically work at the city of Ann Arbor. He's actually coming on board here in January.
Okay, so he's quit school, yeah.
Yeah, so, so Chris, exactly what he's going to do, is sort of up to Joyce. He reports to, the township manager. So we could talk with the township manager and see if there's a way to do that. And in some ways, I think that could come out of the second, item under new business. So sort of the discussion of, different projects and maintenance issues, for the DDA.
So basically, you're still dealing with the 4 Ps.
Which?
Principles, processes, roles, pardon me.
Oh.
I did not. Principles, process, roles, responsibility. What was the last one?
Structure.
Structure, okay.
I personally agree with what Jay, I echo what Jay says, but I think I think ourselves, we should give the lady a better, clear vision of what we're trying to do. I don't believe we need a manager. We need to talk about a project manager. We don't have any projects, do we? Right now at this time, so I think we should look for, our biggest thing was the expansion and maintenance of the and the extension of the life of the DDA. I believe that those are the areas that we should stick on right now. That's what we have, right? So,
And the landscaping thing that you're doing, second half of the
correct.
boulevard for next year, and then we're still working on Dino Drive, if that's ever gonna be. Those are only 2
Right, so
open.
it doesn't seem to me like we really have a project for a project manager to pay him. You know, it's not gonna work she's not gonna work or she for $5,000 or $3,000. It's gonna be, you know, no need for it. I think we should have more projects to do that. I think we use a consultant better for the items that we talked about if we need to do that. And
You know, again, because consultants, all of us, we run businesses, so it's,
I
a
understand.
consultant would be easier for us. I'm looking at it even from a payroll perspective, because we're using Scio Township's TIN number. So if we hired someone, you know, we would probably have to get our own one, which I've, again, asked the IRS for a year to find an old one that supposedly we had. So we don't, as far as I know, we don't have our own tax identification number. All the bank accounts are under Scio's tax identification number. So if we hired someone, we put them on their payroll, and then, they would there'd probably be the benefits that they offer, their retirement plan, health insurance. So I think that's a little bit more that we want to bite off at the beginning. And it might be easier if we did just hire a consultant, either to manage it or just on each project, we hire consultants, but.
As opposed to having a 1099 person that's maybe 10 to 20 hours a week.
Right.
Correct. But that's, Linda, what do you think?
I agree with Gus that we need to define a specific project. I agree with statements Jay's made in the past that the extension of the DDA is a really large project coming up, and we all have other jobs that we do. So I think that's probably the most immediate task at hand, and it's going to be a more than year-long progress to try and pull together the meetings that need to be had and the visioning for what we're asking for and advertising it to the people of the township so that we can have the DDA potentially expand into years beyond. I think it's going to take us some time to find that person, and in my eyes, that's, the most immediate position that we're trying to fill. We need to create a job description for it, and we could widen the job description to fit in some administrative tasks as well. A person that would be that caliber would certainly be capable of helping us fight with the IRS to try and figure out the tax ID number.
Hopefully it's not a fight.
First of all, let me understand, are we looking for someone to extend the life of the DDA, extend the size of the DDA, expand the jobs of the DDA, the tasks of the DDA? Are we looking for someone to do all those three? Or one or two? What exactly are we looking for?
I'll do a straw poll. Who wants to do it? Spend.
We extend the life, we extend the size, we extend the work, and the job description of the, are we going, is the DDA going to take up roads, pathways, mowing, et cetera, more, I mean, what are we needing for? So until we figure that out ourselves, who's gonna hire?
Yeah.
Well, there is a potential to grow the DDA.
Okay,
It's gonna
well,
grow whether we like it or not.
That's what I asked
As
Jason.
long as long as we manage it properly,
That's what I asked.
more tax incremental revenues and
Okay.
local revenue, and then we'll have, it's
Do you mean,
snowball effect.
well, I would just want to make sure I understand. So, there's sort of a straightforward question about extending the existing DDA as a district, with the current district, with the plan that we just adopted really for
So I'm asking,
for the future and so that's one big task. And then there's also, I heard you saying expanding the scope of things that the DDA would do, which seems to go back to the plan, I
Could
think.
fall under, but it's also like the roles and responsibilities of us but who manages the mowing or the sidewalk?
well, that's what I hear, we're going back and forth, so
Right.
we need to say, okay, this is what we're looking for. Okay, so right now, I'm not even sure that I know what we're looking for. Okay,
Right
so,
now, we're looking, number one, first check is defense pay, they can help us extend the DDA. Because if we don't get to it,
so
It
again,
runs out
if we don't get, it doesn't run out for
2029.
2029,
Right,
But it can take us,
Couple
a
years.
Well,
couple
it's
years.
important to extend the DDA to be able to issue bonds. Again, we had this project, over here that we were looking at. It was a $6 to $8 million project, and we were, if we helped finance it. The attorneys were telling us, you can't issue a bond because your DDA is not existing for another 20 years. So we have to extend the DDA now to be able to issue bonds in case we need it. We might not need it, but we have to do that. Looking into it, Traverse City recently did it. We definitely need to hire a consultant. I don't think it's as complicated as you think it is. If we keep the DDA the same, but Kirk Profit comes to mind, some other ones that could help us through that process. So I do think extending the DDA is one issue, and then managing projects in the DDA might be another issue. But the bus shelters was a lot of work. We're getting them out as we go, the storage unit, which we found. But again, I would almost say that Washington Engineering was our consultant in that situation, which we paid him for, so.
So it's almost like the administrative, the tasks, the
Right.
project execution, nothing crazy complicated, just someone to
Yeah.
get stuff
point.
done.
So this is not just a problem for the DDA. I mean, the other advisory boards have bumped up against this issue too, and it can create friction. I mean, an example is the Roads Advisory Committee, where there was a very proactive chair of the Roads Advisory Committee for many years. He got a lot of projects started and completed, but he was not an employee of the township, and so he was doing all of this as the chair of the Roads Advisory Committee, and eventually, the friction sort of reached a point where it just wasn't working, and so I'm not sure that we've found a solution to that in hiring Chris as our project manager, but that was one of the ideas, is that there would be somebody employed by the township who could oversee, and maybe it's overseeing contracts like the one with Washtenaw Engineering, but I mean, that shouldn't be something that we're relying on volunteers to do. It should be someone employed by the township or employed by the DDA who's actually overseeing these contracts with Washtenaw Engineering or whomever.
I think the big difference is we do have the ability in our power to hire.
Yes, we have funds that we can, allocate to that.
So
And the Roads Advisory Committee does not.
I wonder if Amy has any comments so far as where she's seen us kind of going with this conversation and maybe help us redirect.
I think it's going in a lot of good topics are being discussed. I would be careful when you look at the employment structure for the person. And this is gonna be outside of my scope. I mean, I would talk to your employment attorney about, because you can run into issues if you hire somebody as a consultant or a contractor or a 1099 in terms of should they really be an employee? And the IRS has different tests for this of whether they should be an employee versus a contractor. So I would make sure that you cover that appropriately at the right time. But another option could be part-time employees. There's a lot of, if you don't need a full person, hiring part-time people can be very successful. You can sometimes get somebody that might be semi-retired or wants a lot of flexibility. And so you don't have to pay as much, and if you don't have as many things that need to be done, but you could get somebody with a good level of expertise. So those are a few thoughts.
So do you think there may be some interest out there with candidates for this type of position?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I have a few city manager searches going on right now, and I'm getting a lot of talent that's coming out with community development and economic development and infrastructure projects. So there's a lot of good talent out there, including I have a former DDA director that's kind of in the mix on things. So I think finding the right people isn't going to be an issue. There's a lot of good people in the municipal area. I think it's just, again, really figuring out what you want to accomplish, what the priorities are, and boiling that down into, kind of key goals for that person to achieve and kind of right sizing the job. But, it's a process, but I think you're at the beginning of it, but I think you're going down the right pathways.
Ann Arbor's DDA, I looked up their numbers, they generate about $4 million and then they get $18 million from the parking structure. So I mean, that's a sizable, obviously, operation. We're at about 1.7, got $3 million in the bank, which everybody's looking at like a lot of money. And again, it is a lot of money if it's in your pocket, but for this entity, that's right, Linda, that's probably 3 roundabouts. So it's not a lot, again, this project, we're looking at 6 to 8 million. So that 3 million could be gone poof in one project for us. So, but yeah, I think, we just need to figure out.
We need to figure out a task to give the lady, then she can
Right.
come back, then she can come back, Amy can come back and give us,
I think that's a good start. Scios, maybe, they want to pile on the new guy, but that could be a help. He obviously was on the planning committee. I think I looked up his bio. He works for City of Ann Arbor already.
He works as a planner.
Yeah.
And has for 20 plus years for City of Ann Arbor. But he also served on Scio's planning commission, and he's a resident, so he's very familiar with the community.
Yeah.
If we retained Chris through Scio, would we be paying Scio for his services? Would they bill it out?
That's one option, because we sort of reconfigured Sandy Egler's work for the DDA. Instead of paying her directly, she's now, her work for the DDA, the financial management she does for us is paid through Scio Township. So there's sort of a precedent for doing that.
See, we already pay for some of our own accounting.
Right.
Right, some of our own legal, right? And
Now we have our own attorney as opposed to paying for a share of the
Right,
township.
but we have been, let me put it that way.
Yeah.
So to the extent that that the DDA has a different direction than Scio Township does, to the extent that there is a different vision for what the DDA is, then the overlap with Chris, for example, and I know Chris is a great guy, but the overlap there may not be, our interests may not be perfectly aligned. And so if we hire somebody here, project management seems pretty straightforward. Here's a project, let's do it. But I think we're talking about a lot of strategic things as well. So
I think that's true, and that's why I was saying that I think some of this may come up in the next agenda item, talking about potential projects. I'm aware that we're now sort of the conversation. I'm gonna switch the camera.
So I don't wanna waste Amy's time. You know, how can Amy help us, find a person? You know, we would have to put together, what would you want from us? You wanna,
Well, I'm happy to help, and if the time comes, again, I can definitely do it, but I really think you should all decide what. Explore all the options, I'm just, again, happy to be a fly on the wall and help as, if needed. But, cause you might be able to use Chris, I mean, definitely tapping into that could be good, or I could help. And go down kind of a process to figure out what you want to do in terms of, the goals and the vision, putting together some key milestones as well, but I don't, I don't want to put you on the spot to come up with anything for me to do, because I think you've got lots of good discussions that probably should continue.
Several job descriptions, so I definitely help with that.
Could we request that Amy keep an ear to the ground, and if she finds someone that looks like they might be qualified for assisting us with extending the DDA?
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
To just give us a heads up, we'll work on the job description so that we've got something ready.
And there also could be some consulting firms that you could look at as well. Perhaps, but yeah, I'm happy to do a little bit of, digging around to learn more about that particular task, if there's some people that have expertise in.
It does seem to be, my sense is there does seem to be consensus that task is something that the DDA wants help with.
So I was on DDA, I took that last time we extended the DDA. And I was brand new, and I remember it being seemed very involved to me. And I don't know if that was required or if something that the township thought they needed to do at the time, as far as visioning sessions and so on and so on. But there's so much of a sales thing that has to go on with the people whose taxes that we capture.
When was that? I'm curious. Not to-
I remember going to a vision
Not because I'm
session.
curious about you, I'm curious about like how long ago it was.
I think ticked along and just left the DDA.
Yeah.
But, you're talking the era of Bob Bliss and Dave Cornish and Joe Grammatico. You wanna go back to the era of, I was new, and Steve Weaver was still there then, and Marty was involved, I remember that.
Okay, so maybe
20 years.
early 2000s or
Yeah.
late 1990s.
Late 1900s.
1900s.
I was born in like.
that would be good if Amy could help us locate. I've got some names. I think Jeff's got some names of some people that can help, but any help in that direction. And the extending the DDA, it's a chance for us to educate the trustees on what we do. I mean, it's amazing how many people don't even understand how the DDA works, where the revenues come from, what happens if we're not here. There's some people that might not even want us to exist, which I think would be unfortunate for Scio Township, because the revenue would go back to the entities themselves, so.
This topic did come up on Saturday. I don't know if you're aware, some of you participated, I think, but the township had a strategic planning session on Saturday, day-long session. And at least one of the small group discussions got into this topic of what it means if you were to allow the DDA to go away, what that would represent for the township. And then I was interested to see that some people were completely, board members were completely sort of unclear about what it is that represents, how the TIF works and so on. So I think that you're absolutely right. I think there's a need for sort of a basic kind of presentation of how the DDA functions and what purpose it serves for the township.
Any other questions for Amy? Maybe we follow up with an email to Amy, just kind of asking her to look for these types of people for projects or extension or. And
Well, let's
then when we
capture-
figure out what we want to do, right, get back with
I
that.
will figure out what we wanna do, then we send her
Right.
an email with that, and then she gives us her information. Then we'll make a decision.
Unicorn.
Keep us in mind.
Yes.
Chief
And I'll
unicorn,
forward out Amy's contact info.
right?
She's not just, municipality, she can help in a lot of areas.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
See you again.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Good, that was good. All right. So I just Will asked to add this on here, and again, it's kind of the same thing we've been talking about, and just maintenance responsibilities in the DDA. We got 3 major areas. There's probably some other areas too, but these are probably the ones that we talk about the most: roads, pathways, and mowing. So Will, you wanna kick this off?
Well, sure. So I'm still gathering information. I tried to glean as much as I could from Sandy Egler before she headed off. She's on vacation this week. So I have some information that I received from her. One of the things that she explained a little bit further is something that I was unaware of, and that is this maintenance fund. So there's several different funds that we've been talking about that are non-DDA funds, but related to the DDA. And one of them is this maintenance fund. And what I learned is that it was created with kind of seed money from the DDA. So the DDA provided the money to purchase the properties that needed to be acquired in order to accomplish the Boulevard project back in the 80s, I guess. And
after.
after, right?
Right up into-
But in order to accomplish that there was a widening of the road, and some properties were completely acquired, others were partially acquired. Because it was the road commission that was doing the project, they became the owner of those projects, but it was the DDA that paid for the purchase, to the degree that there was money changing hands. So the money came from the DDA. The road commission did its project, and then afterwards it sold some of these properties and then put the money into this fund, donated the money back to the township. The understanding at that time was that the funds would be used for the maintenance of the Jackson Road corridor. And that's how that fund has operated since then. But it's all sort of a kind of a loose agreement. There's nothing sort of that binds the township to that. So the board, as I understand it, and I haven't had a chance to review this with township attorneys, but as I understand it, the board could use that money for something else. It's not under the control of the DDA.
Other than witnesses that were there when that took place.
Right, exactly.
Somebody's-
But
and he's still alive.
yeah. So, I mean, like so many things, it's sort of a norm, an understanding that's how those funds will be used. And there still are some of these little pieces of land that are occasionally being sold, and then the money is placed into that maintenance fund. So there was a parcel that was sold, I think, maybe 6 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, along a sort of near where Park.
Yeah. What's there now? Near where our nets used to be, right?
No, actually, I think, well, I don't know, I'm not sure, that could be another one, but there are some parcels there that are still owned by either the road commission or the township, depending on who you ask. There's a little strip there, and I learned that because, we were trying to find out who was responsible for the poor maintenance. Yes, that's where the parcel was sold. Yeah, there was a parcel that was sold near, where Parkland Plaza intersects with Jackson Boulevard. I think $60,000 went into this fund at that time or something like that.
So this fund, you said that the board can pull this fund away. You're talking about the township board?
Yeah, the township board is
Okay,
the body
so-
that has ultimate control, but the understanding is that that money will be used to pay for maintenance of the
What-
boulevard.
That was the understanding, was it would be used for maintenance.
So have we been using it for maintenance?
Yes,
Okay, so
so it's been working as it was
so can we
originally
continue to
intended.
do that?
Pardon?
Can we continue to do that?
Well, I think we can, I think the only point I was trying to make is that it's all based on an understanding that was, sort of a part of the creation of that fund in the first place many years ago.
So
It's
it's
for the
not a,
maintenance of the boulevard, so it wasn't for maintenance other than
Right, it's not for maintenance, for example, it's not to be spent on,
on Z Road. and
well,
stuff.
I don't know about that. I think within the DDA district is what I understood, but it's not for like plowing the snow on the township hall parking lot.
I don't understand. Why is this coming up in question again, right now after all these years?
Because it's gonna run out.
Well, it's gonna run out.
Yeah, there's a
$410,000 in there.
It's gonna run out, it's gonna run out.
$45,000 a
You
year.
know the reason of it?
Wait,
9.1 years.
A lot of voices, Bob,
It's
can you
gonna
say
run
that
out 9
again?
years.
Can you
So
say
there's
that?
$410,000 in it. I got the numbers from Sandy.
Yeah,
We pay about $45,000 to KBK, but maybe it increases a little bit. So it's roughly 9 years it's gonna run out, maybe 8.
Okay,
And it is funny that it's coming up now, you know? And I mean, you're looking at this and that's about the same time as the DDAs.
correct.
So I think it's kind of, I don't know if they wanna reposition funds for something else and have us pay this, but
I don't,
Timing is-
there's no consensus on any of that at the board level. I don't think there's that much awareness of it. But I think this is part of what the presentation to the board should explain. Because there's these different pots of funds, these different resources, and there's sort of been an understanding of how they're used. The maintenance fund could grow if some of these remaining properties were sold and the money was put into the maintenance fund.
Okay.
That could extend its life.
So,
Wow.
Will, are you aware of any properties other than? See, we've got, personally, I think that little parcel at Parkland Plaza there where University of Michigan has their sign. We should the township should own that and lease it to the University of Michigan to have their sign there.
And put the money into the
And they took
maintenance
care of
fund.
it for many, many, many years by donations of people at Parkland Plaza. And the ownership was kind of tipping around. The other parcel that we owned, that the township now owns is, I still believe it's a corner of Stabler and Jackson.
Correct, the west corner,
The northwest corner.
northwest corner.
So it's gonna be valuable to somebody someday, but it's got some variances and things on it. But if we were to sell it, that would be more money to use for maintenance.
The Kiwanis expressed interest, their facility is located just off Stabler, just to the north. And they expressed interest in that corner parcel for exactly the same uses the University of Michigan is making of the Parkland corner.
I mean, if it wasn't on the go home, if it was on the go to work side, it'd be a great spot for like a coffee drive-through. But it's on the go home side, so, nobody does dry cleaning anymore, so it's not really good for that side, so. But it'd be interesting to see what, Kiwanis,
It's a small parcel, so yeah, it would be
it's under an acre, but it has a lot of variances.
oh, it doesn't.
Yeah, they were granted variances, at the time of the taking.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. Well, there's also, I think there's another little parcel still, or a little strip, that area sort of just to the west of where Arnott's used to be that was cosmetology that's now something else. I don't know.
There was a road right away.
They're supposed to
Where
connect.
Park Road was gonna come back and meet Jackson Road. And the road commission decided that was never gonna happen. So that was.
Doug Fox owned that.
That was-
Who owns it now?
That was split.
But then where the Waterman Gym's buried, which is to the west of that parcel, was bought by Doug Fox from Fox Automotive. And it's just kind of sitting there. But
Well,
then,
the little,
you know, we-
the little strip that
we-
grows over the sidewalk is our responsibility. That's what we determined when we were trying to find someone and make them clean it up. We were like, oh.
It's ours.
When we've met the enemy, it is us.
That's funny.
So, Will, let's ask this question. The township's auditors have never found that the public improvement fund, which I believe is what we're talking about, which is, I think if the fund code is right from what I read from Sandy, is 245. I guess the question I have for the auditors and the township attorney is that a restricted fund that can only be used by the township for these purposes? Because if that's their legal interpretation, then the township cannot use the money for anything else. If there's an informal understanding, that's one thing. If there's a firm legal restricted fund it's governed by Gatsby, you cannot do this.
Right.
So I guess that's a question for the township attorney, since it's a township fund. I mean, I understand the township would like us to do this, and I think. Part of me wonders, you know, like you said, Bob, yeah, the $3 million is 2 roundabouts, 3 roundabouts, but. I kind of wonder what we are actually, you know, we've done the bus shelters, which is a good project. There just seems to be that money sort of sitting there. We did come up with a plan, but we haven't moved forward to take action on.
Well, Bob explained it to me. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. Bob explained it to me when I first began with the DDA as supervisor, that the DDA had been kind of building up this fund with the anticipation of the final phase of the Jackson Road project, which would build out from like Dino Drive
Basically, Dino to
further
Parker.
west to Parker. That was the original intent. And there was also this sort of other big project sort of percolating at the time that I came on back in 2020. This idea of an improvement to North Zeeb, north of the highway. And
Just to clarify, is that the $6 to $8 million that we've thrown around a couple of times? That's what I figured, but I just wanted to make.
well, it could be that much.
Or it could be more.
It depends on, or it could be less. It depends on sort of what the scope of that project is, if it ever comes into being. Personally, I don't think there's as much desire for either of those projects to go through right now as there may have been years ago.
Sure.
So I think we are sort of in a position as a township and as a DDA to sort of step back and look and see what are the sort of more pressing things around, or the things around which there's more consensus. And
That project again was kind of almost forced on us from the Washington Road Commission to tell us to help with egress in that situation. So, and that's kind of what I always
the
worry
North
about
Sea
is the
project.
road commission asking us to help in a different area, maybe down by your building or something else in the future.
I'm not a huge fan of the road.
I'm not.
I'm not a factor.
I'm not being neutral on that, but
It's not a factor of anything that we do there.
Well, I didn't mean to drag us down a rabbit hole, but and I know there's a lot of strong opinions about that particular project. Probably more strong opinions about that one than the extension of the boulevard further west. But I think I mean, part of the presentation to the board and an important thing to understand is that a good chunk of the annual revenue for the DDA goes towards paying off the bonds for that a project that was done years and years ago, and that included, as you pointed out, the utility infrastructure as well as the you know, part of it that's above ground that everyone sees. So I think that's one part of it, but I think you're right too, that we've got this money. What are we gonna do with it? I mean, what do we propose to do with it? And I think we have talked about some proposals over the past 3 years. One of them was to take, you know, sort of each year do one of these side roads that radiates off of the Jackson Road Boulevard and do maintenance or a repaving of those.
Which, you know, would be the last one that remains.
No, there's actually quite a few. We did Enterprise Drive
Yep.
in 2021. And we have not done any of those since. We've I think we narrowed it down to Dino Drive. That was the one that, the road commission felt was the top priority of the others, that remain. We haven't moved that forward. We sort of gotten stuck a couple of times, and that's one of the proposals that we sent, or the request that we sent to the township board, was to create an SAD to make sure that the property owners along Dino Drive are paying for a portion of it. I don't, that's there's different models that have been used to do these different roads over the years. I know April, Jackson Plaza, Parkland Plaza, all of them have been different, sort of done in slightly different ways.
Yeah, they're all different lengths and businesses on them, so that none of them have been the same. We try to come up with some kind of,
Standard.
consistency, and it's just hard to do. And Medi Drive's the same example. There's it's a long, but there's a lot of business on the backside. We've got a new great business on there, right? Ann Arbor pickleball, and the road is terrible.
I think Medi Drive should be our next thing, and under the same kind of premise that we did with Dino Drive, and that we have the estimates and talk to them about whether they'd do a voluntary SAD to make that better, especially now that a lot of the construction is done on Medi Drive.
Phoenix is there, right? Phoenix construction,
Phoenix did that building,
Phoenix
yep.
owns a big portion of that, yeah.
So to that point about road improvements and as a part of the DDA scope. So the Road Advisory Committee has been trying to help guide the Board of Trustees with road improvement ideas for the money that we had held from the 10-year assessment that is now being reversed to the citizens. We have a fund at Scio Township for road improvements of zero effectively for 2024. Every year, the Washtenaw County Road Commission sends a recommended list of roads that they think should be improved in the following year to the township. The concept is the township and the DDA sort of split that. Township that has been doing residential roads, the DDA has been in charge of the commercial roads off of the Jackson Road area. And some roads are chosen and funding is obtained from the township funds or from the DDA funds. The agreements are signed off with the road commission. Yes, these are the roads we plan to do, and work is initiated. There is some matching funds available by the Washtenaw County Road Commission. If you put in $100,000, basically they'll put in $100,000 this year. It's $97,000, I think was the matching. For 2024, Scio Township does not appear to have any funds available for residential road improvement because it was anticipated in the 2020, because it goes to April of 2024. The budget is an April term. And it was anticipated we would use funds out of this millage fund, which has now been, I don't know, planned to redistribute back to the people who contributed into it. So if the DDA wants to improve a road off of Jackson Road, we will likely be the only road funding that will occur unless something substantial changes with the board.
Is that earmarked just for the splits? We always call that the splits. Is that designated just for residential? It's designated for all road, dust control, road improvements, et cetera, isn't it? Well,
Residential.
is that a different fund?
Well, no, it's complicated. So dust control used to be something that the township paid for every year, and the county, the road commission decided that they are gonna cover the full cost of dust control. So we don't have to factor that in the way that we did in the past, assuming that they continue to do that next year as they did this past year. But Linda's right, there's no designated revenue stream at this point, and the balance that was left from the township-wide road SAD which was about 1.6 million. The board voted to credit that back to the property owners. So that is going to be distributed back in winter taxes. You'll see that. It'll be a little confusing, but
It is very confusing
Wow.
for
Yeah.
the record.
yep. And what the board did, it was part of a compromise that was worked out at the board table, which always is a scary moment. But the compromise was to use up to $1 million of ARPA funds to replace the funds that would have been spent on projects that were already in the pipeline that would have used township wide. So that covered the projects that were already sort of underway during the last construction season. But it didn't leave, it leaves unresolved the next construction season. So actually, Linda, you just raised a point that I hadn't thought of, and that is, we have this match from the county each year. They offer us up to, this much money is available if you can match it. And then if a municipality wants to
You're
spend
leaving it on
more.
the table.
And we
Pardon?
are.
The trustees pretty much left it on the table because they don't have any money.
Well, we haven't yet because it hasn't been offered yet, but assuming that we are offered a match of $100,000 hypothetically next year. And the Board of Trustees doesn't come up with other funds to match it. It could be spent on DDA projects if the DDA were to put up the match for that. So, for example, and I think we did something like this back in 2021. I think that part of the cost of enterprise was that project was shared with Road Commission. So it was a Road Commission Township DDA project,
Talking about Enterprise Drive.
Enterprise Drive
Yeah, we
repaving.
took that money out of the fund that we probably shouldn't have, but.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, the revolving fund, the way that it was used probably wasn't correct. But
What do we
that
do?
is what it was set up for, was to pay for paving projects, road projects that
Would be reimbursed by the SADs.
yeah, it was, the way it's supposed to function is that it's supposed to sort of front the money for an SAD and then be paid back into over time by the SAD.
As opposed to having to sell bonds for very, very small projects.
Right, exactly. And that was the intent, because the bonds were expensive if you were doing, small projects, you were paying
So
too
when's
much.
this money expire from the Road Commission? When's,
They offer it to you when they send you the contract for the new year. So in theory, we would be getting that contract from the Road Commission sometime before the end of January of 2024. You have until May 1st, I believe, to commit.
and the township already says we don't have any money, so.
Well, the township hasn't said anything yet.
The township has no other funds allocated. The funds they thought they had allocated for projects are now being returned to the owners. And the budget for the 2023 year ends in April. What are the opportunities that we'll get in front of the board and get a new budget amendment prior to April 15 to fund projects pretty thin?
So there's several options. One of them is there is a little bit of money remaining in terms of ARPA funds.
What's
So
ARPA?
ARPA is
American Rescue Plan Act, do you know roughly how much of that's left?
roughly,
300,000,
I-
2 million?
no, it's not 2 million. It was never 2 million. I think it's probably close to the 300,000
Okay.
figure.
And there are a couple culverts that also need some attention.
Yeah,
That'll come
culverts
through
is
from the
another
road
thing
commission.
that you can work on with the road commission. They actually can put more money towards a match it with culverts. It comes from a different pot than the match that they offer for road improvements and maintenance. But so that's one option that the board hasn't acted yet, but that is one option for putting some money towards road improvements in 2024 during the construction season. There's another option, obviously, is to use general fund dollars, but that's limited, and but that's another option that's there. But there's no dedicated revenue stream because the township-wide road SAD finished, it expired, and the funds that remained in it because of this compromise the board reached are being credited back to the property owners.
So if we had a program at DDA that was for roads that was contingent on the road commission or the township funding the money and maybe getting together with another partner like a partial SAD, then we'd all come to the table and do it, as opposed to leaving that township, the road commission money on the table.
We
So-
certainly have time and ability to act flexibly to get it done.
We do,
We, as the DDA,
right, that's what I'm thinking. That's why you brought it up.
that is indeed the case.
So that is one option which I hadn't thought of, for, kind of partnering to do some of these projects. So if, for example, the DDA, determined that not only did it want to try and move forward with Dino Drive, but it wanted to catch up and also move forward with repaving Medi, we have potentially the ability to partner with, the road commission for those projects and, to also ask for SADs for both of those projects to pay for a portion of it as well. And the benefit of doing that is that then the property owners aren't being hit for the full cost. They're only being hit for part of the cost of the repaving of the road, but I think that,
And if they decline? Well,
well, they'd have to, if it's a town, I guess the benefit of doing it as a board directed SAD is that then it's up to the property owners to petition to oppose it, as opposed to putting the burden on them to go around and gather signatures and come to the ask for it. And I think that, personally, I think that makes more sense in a commercial district than, a neighborhood in a subdivision that wants to repave its roads. It's one thing to sort of go door to door and gather petition signatures. Sometimes people say yes, sometimes people say no, but,
and I can't imagine if the Medi Drive people would be opposed to it,
yeah.
you know, if they had to pick up 25% of it, for instance. We pick up,
When was the last time Scio did an SAD?
When's the last time it did an
Yeah, we went recently.
SAD in the DDA district or anywhere?
Dale Drive.
Yeah, well, we did Daleview, we did,
Last year we did.
Westview Way, we
But
did.
those were not township mandated, those were citizens who brought
Right,
those
right.
SADs.
That's what I'm
This is a different kind of
Yeah,
SAD.
right.
This is, yes, top down, it's an excellent description.
You guys,
So it starts differently, but
Yeah.
it follows the same required steps.
Is the road commission, have they done an SAD or started one?
I don't think they can.
They don't do that
They
anymore.
don't.
They can do it.
They can do it, but they haven't. They
They-
handed it
they-
to Scio.
Medi Drive, I asked, finish construction, they got the largest part, they were not interested.
Yeah.
Okay, the answer, they're not interested.
Right.
They're interested in contributing to an SAD.
They're not interested in contributing, okay, so you wanna do it yourself, sis.
Right.
Okay, so there's your answer for that department, but.
Well,
For the
that's-
sake, for
that's
the
an
sake,
He knows the same thing.
It's not a formal answer.
But I
No,
I think if we.
but for the
send
second
them a
time,
bill,
you got, for
hey,
the second time, you have on the agenda, roads, pathways, Des Moines. Can
Right.
somebody summarize where we stand with that?
Which,
I mean, well, the agenda is road, pathways, Des Moines.
Yeah.
So what decision we made, where we stand, what is the question? Because I know we cover a lot of, we cover a lot of areas, a lot of what ifs, this happens or that happens. What if the county gives us money, if they don't give us, you know what, how about if we stay where we got right now?
Right.
It's my opinion. I mean.
well, I think that the one thing, Gus, that I think this board has deliberated on and made a decision on is Dino Drive.
Right.
And that 2 years in a row, the board said that it would take up half the cost of repaving Dino Drive.
We did.
And it just didn't go forward because the funding for the other half, for whatever reason.
It wasn't there.
Wasn't there, but what we've proposed is to put the other funding there through an SAD. And I guess what Linda has put into the mix is that there's potential, depending on how the board chooses to approach funding, the match from the road commission, of also partnering for a portion of that cost with the road commission.
Can we get an SAD done before next year to get that done?
Can we get it on the Board of Trustees agenda to do the top down?
It would have to be initiated at the first meeting in January, and it would have to move with precision forward because there's 2 public hearings involved.
Not gonna happen.
Well, it could happen. It's possible.
It would
I
have to.
I'm in favor of us paying for the Eagle Drive. It's
All of it?
tax, yeah, I mean, I am. I'd rather pay for asphalt than a lot of other things we talk about, so.
I'd rather stretch it.
Yeah, but I think you're right, like, if we did that, we're never gonna get the money back from the business owners. We'd have to set up this SCD.
I thought you said there's a couple, 3 of them that willing to pay.
And some of them
Yeah.
actually did. We had to
Yeah,
give
we
them money back.
collected some checks and we gave them back.
But like $5,000.
Yeah,
It wasn't.
it was like five out of 30 committed something.
Go have lunch.
And the total cost is over 200,000.
Yeah.
So could we put up, should we take advantage of
Just
the,
$5,000.
whatever the road
Yeah.
commission's gonna put up and then we pay the rest?
Sure.
Instead of going with the SAD.
We're guessing how much
So-
the road commission is gonna give us next
Are
year.
we gonna do an SAD for that?
I know, well, it's just it would take time, we might not be able to get it done next year then, but.
Well, I think the question is, do we want to modify the proposal to the board of trustees? I mean, honestly, Ryan just left, but he's right, it's difficult. I learned that the hard way. It's very difficult to get an SAD through the entire approval process within a construction season. All of those 4 SADs that we have done since I came in as supervisor, the ones that weren't already in progress.
Citizen requested SAD.
Were citizen requested and we worked as quickly as we could to try and get them approved, and we did not make it in 2021. So we wound up having the construction occur.
this one will take a longer
next
time.
Construction season. So if we really want, if the DDA really wants to see this project happen, the best way to do it is to pick up more of the cost and to propose perhaps using a match with the road commission for some portion of it.
I'd be fine with that, but the road commission, the road committee, they wanna use the money on, if we get granted money on the outside of the DDA, not on the inside.
That's true, but the Scio Road Advisory Committee depends on the funding, and it would come almost out, certainly out of the general fund at this point in time, that hasn't been allocated for 2024 road improvements. Part of the problem is that the Scio budget runs April to March 30th, and the road commission allocates these projects by May 1st, and so we're sort of a year behind, or 11 months behind. It's going to be extremely difficult to get any residential road projects.
For dinner drives,
Amend the budget to.
for dinner drives, anybody can give us some funds?
I'm sorry.
If the road commission follows the same protocol that they have for the last 5 years, there is a matching fund which is offered each year with the contract. And based on what the matching funds available in 22 and 21 were, we would estimate that they would be approximately $97,000.
That's our best chance, right?
It's a very good chance.
For all of
When
Scio,
are we gonna know about that?
End of January, probably.
End of January, okay?
Does anybody know about what the price tag was for Medi Drive?
not many. I mean, we do a proposal, old proposals.
I think Medi was a little bit more expensive than Dino Drive.
Dino was like 250, 250,
We put up half of Dino, and so ours was.
yeah, 213.
They were both, they were comparable though. I
So-
think Medi was about, it was 200,000 plus. Both of them were 200,000 plus. It was just more of a plus for
What if we
Medi.
approach the owners on Medi Drive and basically if they were to commit a third of the cost, we would commit a third, and hopefully we'd get the township to commit a third, or pardon me, the road commission to commit a third. Otherwise, ultimately, there'll be an SAD for Medi Drive and they'll pay it all.
Well, I think what we learned, because Bob spent a lot of time approaching the people on, property owners on Dino. I think what we learned is the best way to approach people, property owners in commercial areas in particular, about participating in a road funding project is through an SAD.
Top down.
So
Yeah.
if we're serious about doing it, the way to do it is to say, you all would pay this, your, share of, you each would pay an equal piece of this share of the cost of
But
the
we won't make
project.
the budget, we won't make the budget season.
Well, that's the problem. That's the
Can we
trade-off.
can we do where if the road commission says at the end of January, yes, if you match our dollars, or we'll give you $97,000, we pay 125. Can then, if we were to think of what the excess is that we paid, can that be reimbursed through an SAD?
It's difficult to do an SAD after the fact. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, I think.
Or we start it now.
That's what I heard
it's
after, you
not getting
can't
done.
do the SAD after the fact, it has to be prior.
See, Medi Drive only has 6 or 7 property owners, if I'm not mistaken.
I know, but Gus talked to them, they kind of think differently, they think the Scio should be paving that already.
Well,
They're not gonna change their minds.
Yeah, everyone thinks that someone else should pay for
Exactly.
roads.
I mean, that's, so,
I've learned that
I
that's.
think a top down, if we said, okay, we're gonna pay 50% of all these projects now. And then we set up SADs top down for those roads, that's fine. Or I think we can, again, we do have, a little bit of money, we can pay a couple of these, but.
But if you think about it, the DDA's purpose, broadly defined, is to make sure the district, the business district, the commercial district is maintained through these tax increment funds that are captured from all kinds of different taxes, not just Scio townships.
I don't know, maintain would be the word, be beautify and help with commerce.
I know, there's this
I like
tension
that,
around
but yeah,
the word maintain,
exactly.
but I think everyone agrees that whatever you call it,
Right.
if the roads have always been something that the DDA has been comfortable investing money in. And so I would say, if the DDA really wants to see these projects happen, the best way to do it is to look at those funds that aren't committed to paying off the bond. And saying, what can we make go forward with those funds? How can we use that leverage to make things happen? As opposed to, getting bogged down in process. I think that's why Dino Drive has gone through 2 construction seasons now with no action.
So going back to what Jay said in the first place, the money from the road commission will be left on the table if the DDA does not act towards this. Do we have a resolution or something that the DDA gave to you to bring to the Board of Trustees for the SAD on Dino Drive? We had discussed it, but I don't know.
We had given it to the item.
Well, if there was a vote, I don't know that we needed to have something written up. We do
We
have,
wanted to use the maintenance fund, and that's where it got bogged
We
down.
requested that the trustees proceed with a.
SAD.
so there was a vote, there was a
Yeah,
request,
we-
and that will, my intent is for, out of this discussion, to then sort of synthesize into a presentation. Hopefully, DDA board members would come and make that presentation to the board. And then
What we'd like to-
with that context, the board will hopefully feel comfortable taking action to approve whatever we are saying. Now, approving the SAD, I mean, that is one way to do it. It is a big responsibility and, in terms of, all of the steps that are involved.
Project manager.
Well, we do have a project manager, although he confessed he has absolutely no familiarity with SADs.
Well, he can learn quickly.
Yeah,
Um,
it's largely attorney driven anyway.
I
All right.
don't- Is it, would it also help influence the board if we were to then set some, over the next 3 years, we wanna tackle these certain roads, so we
Penny
let them
this year,
know.
enterprise this year.
We're gonna
that.
follow the same process,
Let's
we
say-
pay X, we work with the road commissions to pay X, and then we do an SAD.
We can't do that.
So then we can say this isn't a one and done, this is something we're gonna consistently do. And then I think it comes back to Gus's comments that like, why do we keep talking about this? Let's implement a process and
What I did pull out this is from a road commission, one of their documents that they use to base their matching proposal, their contract proposal on. And this is, it shows sort of roads that are in poor condition. And the ones that are in the DDA district are Dino Drive, Medi Drive, and North Stabler. And, those are the ones, I mean, there are, I guess there may be one down here that's off of Park. I'm not sure if that's in the DDA district or not. But in any case, there's sort of clear candidates for this kind of partnership with the road commission. And I think if the DDA wanted to make those happen, I mean, that could be the proposal.
Right.
And in some ways, that would be an elegant solution to the, otherwise the township doesn't have a sort of clearly identified funding source with which to match those road commission
We'll
funds.
make a proposal to help with this, they call them feeder side roads. What would we say? We say 50% of the 100%? What
Well,
would the proposal say?
I think what I would suggest, if what we really want to do is see these projects go forward without a whole bunch of other steps, sort of putting hurdles in front of the township. is that the DDA would propose to match and pay whatever beyond the match that the road commission puts forward in order to see Dino Drive go forward, and if if the board felt strongly enough about it, Medi Drive, we had a proposal last year from the road commission to, for both of those projects. I think the road commission is sort of chomping at the bit to do them.
Yeah, cause they don't have any money.
Well,
Go ahead.
exactly.
Okay, easy, breathe. Go ahead.
I see that there's a potential SAD that could be obtained for Medi Drive. And
It
for,
would take 2 years.
and that's fine, and for Dino Drive. Dino Drive doesn't care, because they've been 2 years and they've,
No, they know it's coming.
I see that the challenge for us is eventually gonna be Stabler Road. And the reason is Stabler Road is occupied by one, the government, right? Scio Township,
At the end, yeah, we have a parcel.
one of the bigger property owners. A large 501c3. Kiwanis Club. And then there's a couple of smaller groups in there.
In a warehouse.
And,
Yeah,
and basically vacant land owned by, I believe Adonaf still owns that.
Actually, I would take,
Or Allied or something.
I see that particular road differently. Because I think development will occur on the privately, the vacant parcels that are privately owned. And I think at that point, the burden will be on that developer or developers
To do the whole road.
that I think the road commission will make them do it.
And that's 2025 anyway, Jay, so we've got time on our side. If you wanted to list 3 roads, it would be logical to list North Stabler as a road, but
Because North Stabler would be the one that we could pull out of our hat and just say DDA is gonna pay half. We'll match whatever the road commission wants to do, even if we only go halfway down.
But that's one where there will be construction. So in some ways, I would
It'll be
defer that one and wait until the construction occurs and then pave the road and not run all the construction trucks on it.
well, I like Jennifer's proposition of bringing it together as a multi-year
Yeah.
promise. And if you wanted to throw North Stabler in there as your 3rd year, what are the chances that construction will occur on North Stabler by somebody in the next 3 years? I don't know if it's ripe yet or not. 5 years? Jeff's shaking his head. All
Can we do an asterisk?
28, Jeff?
You
Good
have to
answer.
pass it,
Just have to.
you have to amend it, you have to amend it.
Yes,
Do you have property on North Stabler? No. Oh, okay, all right.
he knows the neighborhood.
He knows the name. Well, I'm sure looking at vacant parcels all over the place.
So do we have a consensus?
So the
Kind of,
I think this is a twofer. We need a DDA member to take it to the board and we need a proposal to bring to the board.
right, and there's talk of a couple DD members going to the next
Meeting?
trustee meeting
on
to
the 12th.
explain
We'd be
this,
really-
asking for this
I know.
and the maintenance fund, and then I think we were gonna talk about just one other issue we're gonna talk about.
Well, there's the tree fund.
The tree fund and-
Tree fund reimbursement, and there was a letter to the Board of Trustees from the DDA requesting the $16,000 reimbursed for the planting of trees along the boulevard. Part of the difficulty is we don't have a policy for the use of those funds. It's still sort of a work in progress, but I think in some ways, the board could accept that pending the, finalization of the policy.
Right,
And I'm guessing that the policy will, I would hope, include reimbursing other entities for planting trees in Scio Township, especially in the DDA district, which is where most of the funds came from for the tree fund.
I don't see
So there's
that.
been a policy to take money from developers against their will. And no way to disperse that money.
Well, is
To the same
money,
party they requested.
any money taken from developers by a municipality is by definition against their will, I think.
Well, is there a policy?
So I hate to use the E word on that, but,
Is there a tree fund policy being kicked around or are we looking to
Yes.
create one? There is
No,
one.
that's not the DDA's responsibility. No, there is an effort it's been sort of stop and start for years now, but it seems to be reaching fruition finally.
Yeah, 'cause we're asking for the money from.
Yeah, and that will make it easier for the board to sort of apply criteria, but you know, the board could choose to just say, yeah, this seems like a worthwhile use of those funds.
At one point, you suggested that I come up with a policy for dispersing those funds, and I thought about it a lot. And it's far more complicated than you think, because, you know, I come in with a request and I'm gonna plant a 1-inch sapling and I need $670. You know, I'm gonna take a 3-inch diameter hole and, you know, a bare root. And so it became that there needs to be, where Chris Cheng might be able to be involved in that process, as far as just the inspections to make sure that before the funds are are dispersed, et cetera, because, you know, I'm on a board that isn't a DDA district of residential homes that wants to request trees, but why bother until there's a way to really decide how and where the money will come from.
So I don't want us to get, and this seems like a pun, but I don't want us to get into the weeds on this, but there is an effort ongoing, Jan Culbertson sort of riding herd on it along with Hannah Cohn, our Director of Parks, Preserves and Pathways. And I think that it's going to, you know, be something early next year. There will be a tree policy for the use of those tree funds. And we're about to get another $177,000 from the Lithia project. So that fund is about to grow. And also not a fund. But the interesting thing, I saw some of the examples they were looking at. There's a lot of different ways that communities, similar tree funds are used in other communities. And one of them is to buy land that already has trees on it and just keep it as a place where there are trees growing.
Park.
Yeah, well, or just as a place where trees are growing. It doesn't even have to be a park. So that's, you know, there's different ways to think about it than I think we had been thinking about it. We were thinking about it as planting trees to literally replace the trees that were moved. But if you're protecting trees, and that can also be another way of using those funds.
Okay, so circling back, December 12th, we're trying to get somebody in front of the Board of Trustees
Yes.
to talk about tree fund reimbursement for the DDA trees on the boulevard and the maintenance
And
fund,
the revolving fund.
the revolving.
In the revolving fund, that's the.
So we
that's-
do come to a
Just to bring
consensus.
it up.
So there's three funds that are sort of at issue here.
So are we gonna make a proposal to them about a long-term plan on the roads? Right. So
Is that the same meeting or a second meeting?
it'll be the same. The sooner we do this, the sooner we get these projects done. But do we have language for it? Do we agree on, are we gonna do the match? The DDA will match 50% of the costs for the feeder roads. These three in particular in the next couple of years or something, some kind of.
Is it match or is it supplement up to 50%?
We had said
Okay,
match
previously we,
and pay to whatever exceeds the Washtenaw County Road.
okay, cause I remember last year, I feel like we talked about
Or last year.
no more
this-
than X
Yeah.
dollars.
We said 113,000, which was 1/3. We were trying to get the revolving fund and then.
I
Right,
think it was
Scio or the
117.
Right.
Yeah.
So it'll be 117.
Those the estimates that we've looked at are written by the road commission.
Right.
And they're old now, so they may have changed.
Well, and so those are floating numbers and
Yeah,
what is gonna be up to half, since
Right.
they write them, they perform the work. In other words, they've got total control of it.
Right.
Well, if it comes in under cost, my experience is sometimes it does, then the road commission. You know, they don't like take the, you know, excess money. They say, oh, it came in under cost. We're not billing you for
That
as
happen?
much. Yeah, it happens
I was in
almost
an
every
SAP
year.
I was in an SAP where the road commission actually had their equipment on site doing some of the work and billing some of the work to our SAP funds. And you know, it was always a little,
Well, some
Curious
projects
as
come
to
in
how that
higher, some
works.
come in lower, you know.
no, but I mean, they actually physically, the road commission was one of the contractors involved in the project. And then billing that to the
Oh,
SAP.
you're not gonna get much money back then.
Yeah, they bill fringe benefits.
Well, I think
I need language.
it's consistent with,
I've heard of
what I
that.
guess what I would say,
Stated.
I guess
You gotta be careful.
Roads take forever.
I guess what I would say, Linda, in answer to your question is that the DDA in my 3 years here has talked about these feeder roads and sort of set as a goal investing in a feeder road per year as a project. We could accelerate that if we choose, but I think the DDA was very clear that it wanted to move forward with Dino Drive. I think depending on what the board does with the match from the road commission, I mean, the DDA could look at, as part of its capital improvement budget for, next year, could look at expanding that. But I think for now, there's clarity that the DDA board supports moving forward with Dino Drive. And roughly half of the cost. The other half could come from either road commission match and other funds, ARPA funds, for example, or it could come from an SAD if the board chose to impose an SAD. But there's no way, there's no mechanism for having that's functional for having the property owners participate other than an SAD.
Jay's defense, again, he had to pay his whole.
I know.
It always comes back, and that was 20 years, 30 years ago or so.
You have to understand, no, that was like less than 10 years ago. The last road that we paid for was a fire drill. In other words, we're gonna lose some funds. If DDA doesn't cough up some money, this group of people aren't gonna pay any of theirs, but we can get some free money if we do it. And we're going down that road again. And we've asked the township to do an SAD. They have not done an SAD. And then we're gonna have the fire drill. We're gonna lose this money from the road commission. If DDA doesn't cough up some money, because we can act. And it's gonna be the same thing. And then next year it'll be the same thing. Next year will be the same thing.
Again, everybody attacks the pots of money. I'm glad we have money. Washington Road Commission has no money. Everybody's mad we got too much money. At least we have money. These other places, Washington County doesn't have money. So they have to go look at, so.
They have money, they
because they've
just don't have
misspent it.
enough to do all of the
I
work
know.
that needs to be done.
But at the same time, we gotta get these roads hopefully paved, and it helps businesses and increase tax revenue for the Scio.
And eventually, are we gonna be out of money for the same reason that we probably spent the money we shouldn't have?
So is that enough clarity for?
Yeah, I know, we got that language.
Can I try and quote this and see where we go? Yeah, this is a draft
Good.
proposal. The DDA commits to invest in a feeder road annually as a planned project to match 50% of the Washtenaw County Road Commission road cost estimates for those roads, for those commercial roads, and pay funds as necessary that exceed the Washtenaw County Road Commission road agreement matching funds to push road improvement forward in Scio Township. Please.
What about the SAD? Oh, sorry. Oh, the SAD component. Are we gonna pursue that at all in this kind of the yearly activity? If we start early enough, we can.
If we change it just a little bit to say, subject to additional funding from other sources such as Washtenaw County Road Commission match or SAD or
Other funding.
other funding, ARPA, whatever it might be. But I do think it's important to get into the resolution that it is subject to. We could, if we're committing to doing a road a year, then it needs to be subject to something. Otherwise, we're just committing to a road a year. And then my last comment, not really on the proposal, which I think is well written, is that the need for an administrative person so that we're not constantly doing fire drills is really important. It's really important for somebody on our behalf to be able to meet with some of the people on the board, on the Scio board, and find out what do they really want. It's really important to do all these things, because we come here in isolation with access to some funds and the ability to be nimble. But we fail to plan 2-3 years ahead, which is what everybody else does. I think that's the biggest need for the opening conversation with Amy, is to have somebody help us in that.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Linda?
Try again. The DDA commits to invest in a feeder road, in an annual feeder road as a planned project to match 50% of the Washtenaw County Road Commission's estimates, subject to additional other funding from Washtenaw County Road Commission matching funds or Scio Township Board of Trustee initiated SADs. and pay funds as necessary that exceed the Washtenaw County Roads Commission road agreement matching funds to push road improvement forward in Scio Township.
So it's
Yeah,
not an
closer.
up, it's not an up to, it's that we started out saying 50% and then we're saying, gee, we'll pay any additional.
Well, I think it's
Well,
allowing
so it-
flexibility for the DDA to move forward if it chooses. Based on, you know, the outcome of efforts to find funds to pay for the other half of the cost.
And may pay funds as necessary that
How
exceed.
about just say that we're committed to doing it, subject to additional funding being provided, and we can define what additional funding is. And in an amount sufficient to,
Cover the other half of the cost.
well, without getting
Cover the
into the
remainder.
other half of it, an amount sufficient in the board's discretion to complete the project.
There you go.
Good. Need a vote on that? I thought it was gonna be a special short meeting.
It was special.
Well,
Special.
we still have some other, we
I
have
know.
2 and 3 to go through here.
No, that's gonna I mean, looking at the other 2 items, pathways, we do get part of the SAD for the pathways, the 10-year millage, we get it's about $97,000. And we've used that before, and I believe we don't have to use it for pathways. But we have, so I do believe we should, and we will in the budget, keep roughly at least $100,000 towards pathways.
Well, we
To help in the DDA.
I've thought about that. We've spent money on the Parkland Plaza segment of the pathway network, and then in that area, it's sidewalk. The map that I printed is one that I created when Bob and I were looking at this some time ago. I don't know if it was ever distributed to the DDA board, but what it shows is in green is sort of segments of
And the yellow map, you see the
a
green.
pathway that
those are
sort of
sidewalk
that
pathways.
overlap, where the pathway network sort of overlaps with the proposed pathway network. Some of it's constructed, some of it's proposed. Where it overlaps with the DDA district and where there are planned unit development projects that can, and in some cases have, contributed funds towards pathways. So that's what this represents. I think what I would like to propose is that the DDA sort of formalize what has been kind of an informal understanding that the funds that the DDA captures from the Parks and Pathways millage that was approved by the voters, Scio voters in 2020, would be sort of dedicated towards work, you know, some aspect of this, accomplishing this pathway network where falls within the DDA district.
So basically what you're saying is if the DDA gets money from the TIF or from the millage, to the extent that we capture that, we spend it on what it was intended to be.
Yeah,
In our district.
some aspect of pedestrian.
We already spent, you say,
Yeah, we're doing that. It's not.
we're doing that, it's 97,000, so why are we
Yeah.
bringing it back up?
I know. We have and we should, we did
Okay,
that.
good. So case closed, next item.
Yeah, and I agree with that statement. We should.
Okay, all right, so we'll just
There's a project you see.
Sorry, why are we here? What are we doing?
right.
Yeah, I'd like to see where that pathway over the 94 is. It looks like a pedestrian
We're
bridge
gonna
or
be here for
something.
3 hours. talking about-
Well, I think at the time,
Yeah,
this was years ago, and it was the pathway network, that area has
So I'm
been
just
better.
looking at that. I don't want to be.
Yeah, no,
Locked into-
I'm not saying locking into this, you know, some of these concepts
So
here,
I,
but
so I think we're in agreement. We'll do that. And then for the mowing, is there anything, anybody have a particular thought on the mowing? I think we looked at the numbers. Again, the money is there for another 8 to 9 years.
Right.
You know, go ahead. Linda.
As the only person I believe that was at the Scio 2023 budget discussions at the beginning of this year, I very clearly heard, excuse me, Ryan. Did you join me in my consensus that what I heard several board members say clearly was that they felt that funds controlled by the Scio Township Board of Trustees should not be paying for mowing the Jackson Road Boulevard. It should be a DDA expense. they consider that maintenance fund to be funds controlled by Scio Township Board of Trustees.
I don't know that there's consensus on the board of trustees.
I don't think there's consensus, but
Yeah.
I heard strong
Opinions.
opinions formed, which I believe will reinstate for the 2024 budget discussion. So we need to present a strong front.
I think they'll be heading for litigation if they do that.
Yeah.
Cause there's still people.
Well,
who
again,
Know what that funding, how that.
Well, I think
But not enough of
Ryan
that
asked
piece.
Ryan asked a good question earlier in the meeting when he said, is that a restricted fund? And that is a question, I think, for attorneys to sort of sort out.
Yep.
But assuming,
For the attorney, it's also a question for, I believe, Sandy.
right, well, Sandy is the person who said this is also, she agreed with you that this is a question for attorneys to sort out. So, because she was unable to find anything that documented that was a restricted fund, other than this sort of discussion that occurred when it was created. So there was nothing formal as far as Sandy was able to determine. Attorneys may be able to sort it out and find that kind of formality. But I think the story of that fund, how it was created with DDA money is similar to the story of the revolving fund. And in some ways is similar to the story of the tree fund. The money that went into those funds came from either the DDA funds, you know,
They came
proper,
from the
or
DDA
they came
bank.
from the development within the DDA district. So I think there's an argument to be made, and that's what I think the presentation will help to explain to the board at our next meeting.
I think we should just
That
take,
those funds should be, you know, seen as usable within the DDA district.
All right, so can I move backwards far enough to say that we, the DDA, are requesting you, the supervisor, to put a item on the agenda for the Board of Trustees meeting on December 12th, where a undisclosed or more DDA member will come forward and talk about the request for the tree fund reimbursement
That's
letter
one.
and the revolving fund allocation cooperation agreement between the DDA and the Road Advisory Committee as a prescriptive body to the Board of Trustees for how revolving funds should be spent. And this proposal where we are requesting, we're telling them of our commitment. Peter Rose,
Specifically, you know, drive.
Drive, and then we would request a first meeting in January follow-up to come and tickle them again.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to present this on the 12th, lay it all out, and then it's in a sense, maybe it's a better discussion to have in the budget process and to sort of
Yeah.
Right
formalize
now.
because the DDA's position on some of these things will clarify as part of our budget process. But I think the only other piece I would say is that the DDA wants to communicate to the board that it recognizes that the portion of the millage that's captured by the DDA TIF, the Parks and Pathways millage, the DDA's intent is to spend that on projects that are within
Yeah.
Parks and Pathways that fall within the DDA district.
And again, the trustees, you know, where we overlap, we should work together, but we're not gonna always have the same philosophy. And again, they can have input to our board, there's no problem with that, but they're supposed to approve our budget and then any debt we issue. So,
DDA is not obligated to do that, make
Exactly.
boulevard, so if they wanna spend the money and let the boulevard be, be weeds, that's fine.
I
At a certain point.
I know
if they
that
don't want-
issue-
if
I
they're
know
gonna
that-
Grab it,
I know that issue of the maintenance fund was raised. I think, like me, I think there's a lot of people that don't understand the origin of that fund and how it actually came from DDA funds in the first place.
so I,
coach them up, well.
could I be authorized to talk with the DDA attorney?
Sure.
Regarding the,
He helped with,
where we are.
there's
as
some
far-
bus shelter language he helped with. And I kind of put together a couple of questions for him, but yeah, maybe we make a smaller group to talk with our attorney.
Or what our legal sense should be as far as maintenance.
Yeah.
Because
And again, looking at other DDAs, they do maintenance, but they're usually like shoveling downtown areas. You know, something directly with business to increase business, not mowing a boulevard. I don't see that, but I do see some maintenance projects that are gonna help directly with economic growth.
maintains the landscaping along other county roads.
Yeah, I mean, Woodward and Telegraph over there, it's the counties and the cities that do it. It's not a DDA.
Is that enough? I think we have enough clarity.
Right,
Linda, do you
yeah.
feel like you have enough clarity?
You're doing great. We're not gonna, she's
All right,
doing all
I
the
can-
work. Don't
I'll-
criticize her on the language.
Well, I'll show up as
Never.
one of the people on the 12th because they know who I am and why I would be there, but I would really appreciate a second,
What time is it at?
7 p.m. And we might be 5th on the agenda, which puts us at 8:30, and we might be 10th on the agenda, which puts
Well,
us at 10:30.
there's always this sort of wild card of, you don't know how long people are gonna talk. at the
I could be there, I could be
Yeah,
there. and
Ryan will
text-
be there.
I'll be there as well.
Says,
I need to be careful because I'm representing two different committees.
Yeah.
There,
That's
it's
what we're
board
kind of
advisory.
thinking. We're thinking out loud of,
If you'd like to come, be happy to let you speak instead. I'll be there regardless, probably
So
for one
we-
reason or another.
Okay, we need to submit our stuff like tomorrow for this meeting, if we're submitting anything.
I'll work with you on it. I've got the materials that I acquired from.
maybe just put together a draft and just let everybody look at it. And if there's any little things.
Okay, so
Please.
Ryan and I will stand as authorized representatives of the DDA.
Well,
I think
let's,
let's,
let's hang on to that.
we don't need to pin that down yet.
Okay, I just want to make sure that
We'll
we're.
get two people
Yeah.
to.
Bob's
put
been
it in my
talking with people
calendar.
about presenting.
It's in my calendar.
Great, okay,
Linda.
so, good, and then let me just read this thing that you're gonna read one
Don't
more
call it for
time.
a short meeting anymore. Just call it for the long one.
Yeah, yeah. DDA commits to invest in an annual feeder road improvement project to match 50% of the Washtenaw County Road Commission road improvements cost estimates, subject to additional other funding being provided in an amount sufficient and board support commitment to finish each project.
I think we should vote on that. Probably should be a voice vote, even though it's not definitive amount of money.
We already voted on this a couple times.
I guess that's fine.
And we're waiting on, again, we're waiting on the trustees with the match.
Commitment, we can't
All right.
spend fund without advice.
Good, so pathways, we talked about, the mowing, we talked about a little bit. I'm sure these will be, we'll still talk about them, but maybe we'll get a committee together to talk to the attorney. Separately, all right, and then. Do we need language going to Amy eventually to help,
Eventually.
have her help us find someone to help us?
Yeah, she won't be able to find.
She can help us help them.
Yeah, we have to decide what we're looking for.
Right.
Of course,
We
you
got
gotta-
that, we're looking for, we're gonna write it down in the paragraph or two and send it to her.
Unicorn.
Is there
But
meetings
she, I think she would be,
Yeah.
December 12th?
from our last meeting?
What meeting is this? I didn't hear what exactly.
Do we have meeting minutes from our last
I
meeting?
didn't bring.
But this wasn't an official meeting, this is a special meeting, so
Right,
we
to
didn't,
Adjourn.
our next regular meeting
So I
doesn't
didn't,
occur
yeah.
until,
So we'll have two
Have we
sets of
adjourned,
minutes
Bob?
at our next meeting.
Yeah.
yes, we will.
All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Passes.
Just
1:40.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Happy holidays, everybody.
All right, was. What
Oh,
is
you
the
guys
amount
have a
still
good
owing on
Christmas.
bond?
Hang on to those.